They really thought they could throw me out of my own house. I'll never forget that day. I had gone to the grocery store, like I always do, every Friday morning, bought my milk, my bread, my coffee creamer, even grabbed a bouquet of fresh flowers because I was feeling good. The sun was shining, the breeze was warm, and I thought to myself, this is going to be a peaceful day. But peace? No, that was the last peaceful moment I'd have for a very long time. I came home, arms full of bags, humming one of my old favorite church songs, and when I stuck my key in the front door, it didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. I jiggled the knob, checked the lock, even went around to the back door. Locked. Every window shut. That's when my stomach sank. My own house, the house I bought, the house I raised my children in, had locked me out. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe the lock was broken. Maybe something happened while I was gone. So I knocked, and then I knocked harder. After a moment, my daughter-in-law's face appeared in the window. She didn't look scared. She didn't look confused. She looked smug. Then she slowly mouthed the words, "You don't live here anymore." And just like that, she closed the curtain. Oh, my blood boiled right there on the porch. I pounded on the door until my hands hurt, yelling for my son. Yelling for someone to let me in, but no one came. And that was the moment I decided this was war. Because what they didn't know was this. The deed, the house, the bank account. All in my name. And if they thought they could change the locks on me, well, they were about to find out just how fast I could change their whole lives. You know, people think these things happen overnight. That one day your children love you, respect you, and the next they just throw you out like a bag of trash.com. But the truth is, it doesn't happen overnight. No, it builds, slowly, quietly, like rot in the walls of an old house. Let me take you back. This house wasn't just a roof and four walls to me, it was everything. I bought it with my husband. Back when we were young and barely had 2 nickels to rub together, we painted every room ourselves. I brought my babies home from the hospital to this house. Every birthday, every Christmas, every heartbreak, it all happened here. When my husband passed away, the house became my anchor. It was what kept me steady through the grief. And when my son, my only boy, came to me one day, telling me he was struggling, telling me they couldn't afford their apartment anymore, I opened my door. Of course, I did. That's what mothers do. I told them, move in. We'll make it work. At first, it felt good having life in the house again. My son laughing, his wife helping me cook dinner, the sound of footsteps on the stairs. But little by little, I started noticing things, like how my daughter-in-law, would roll her eyes at me when she thought I wasn't looking, or how my son would stop talking the moment I walked into the room. I'd find little things missing from my pantry. I'd hear whispers at night behind closed doors, and then came the arguments. It started small, they said. I was too involved, that I needed to give them space. Space in my house. I swallowed my pride, tried to keep the peace, but the tension only grew thicker. One day, I came home early from church and heard them arguing in the kitchen. I stayed quiet, just outside the door. And what I heard, well, it still burns me up when I think about it. Her voice sharp, cold, saying, "She's too old. This is our house now. She needs to go." And my son, my own flesh and blood, didn't argue. He didn't defend me. He just said, "We'll figure it out." That was the moment I realized they weren't planning to live with me. They were planning to live instead of me. Still, I tried to believe it was just talk. Maybe they were frustrated. Maybe it would pass. But then came that Friday, the day I went shopping, the day I came back and found the locks changed. And everything became crystal clear. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan. And they thought I was powerless to stop them. But let me tell you something, they must have forgotten who I am. I didn't survive this long by being weak. And if they wanted a fight over this house, oh, they were about to get one. You know that feeling when the world suddenly goes quiet? That was me, standing there on my porch. Bags of groceries in my arms, staring at the shiny new locks on the door. I'd opened every single day for over 40 years. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, breathing in and out, until I felt something inside me go cold. And then, I smiled. Because that was the exact moment I decided if they wanted this house so badly, I'd let them have it. But not in the way they thought. I walked back to my car, set my groceries down, and drove straight to town. Not to confront them. Not to beg. No, I went to see my lawyer. I still remember the look on his face when I told him what happened. First, shock. Then anger. Then this slow little grin. Because he knew. Something my son and his wife clearly didn't. This house wasn't just my home. It was my asset. It was in my name. And I had every legal right to do with it whatever I pleased. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up in a cheap motel room, thinking about every dinner I'd made for them. Every holiday I'd paid for. Every time I'd babysat their kids so they could go out and have fun. And this was my thanks. To be locked out. By morning, I had my answer. I called my lawyer and told him to put the house on the market. Yes, the very house they thought they'd just stolen from me. And not only that, I had him draw up the paperwork to transfer every bit of money I had in my will to a charity I cared about. If they didn't want me, they sure as hell weren't going to want my money. It took about a week for things to really get rolling. And in that week, I stayed quiet. I didn't call. I didn't knock on the door. I didn't even drive by. I wanted them to think they'd won. I wanted them to get comfortable, maybe even start redecorating. Because when the papers went through, when that for sale sign hit the front yard, I wanted them blindsided. And oh, when the day came, it was delicious. My lawyer called me first thing that morning. "Sin went up today," he said. "House is officially listed." I drove out there, parked across the street, and waited. It didn't take long. My daughter-in-law came outside in her robe, coffee in hand, and froze when she saw it. Her face turned so red I thought she might burst. Then she started screaming for my son. He came running out, hair sticking up, and for a second, I saw him glance at that sign with this wide-eyed panic before he noticed me sitting there in my car. And let me tell you, the look on his face was worth every tear I'd ever cried. He stormed over to me, shouting, "How could you do this?" he said. "This is our home." And I just looked at him calm, cool, and said, "No, sweetheart, this is my home. And I'm selling it." You could see the words hit him like a slap. He started begging then, saying they had nowhere else to go, saying I was overreacting. And do you know what I told him? I said, "You made it clear you didn't want to live with me. Well, congratulations, soon you won't have to." Then I rolled up my window and drove away. And oh, the calls started coming then, every hour. Voicemails, texts. My daughter-in-law tried to cry her way out of it, telling me how unfair I was being. Unfair. After they locked me out of my own house. No, this wasn't unfair. This was justice. You know what felt even better? The house sold faster than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks, it was under contract. And when the papers were signed and the check cleared, I bought myself a little cottage on the edge of town. Quiet, peaceful. No drama. Just me, my garden, and my peace of mind. Sometimes I drive by my old street, and I see the new family living there. Kids playing in the yard, flowers in the window boxes. And I smile, because that house deserved better than what my son and his wife turned it into. And so did I. When the house officially sold, I thought that would be the end of it. I thought they'd pack up, move on, and finally leave me be. Oh, how wrong I was. The day they got the eviction notice, my phone rang so many times it nearly burned through the table. Calls, texts, voicemails, my son begging, threatening, bargaining. And for the first time in months, I felt light. like I'd shed something heavy I'd been carrying for years. Funny thing, the very next week, my neighbor called me. You know, she said, your son was over here complaining about what you did. Said you ruined his life. I laughed. No, I said, I saved mine. And that's the truth. Selling that house wasn't just about revenge. It was about taking my life back. It was about reminding myself that I mattered too. That I wasn't just some old woman to be hidden away when I stopped being convenient. I was the one who built that home. And if I had to choose between peace and family who disrespected me, I'll choose peace every single time. Now, when I sit in my little cottage, sunlight streaming through the windows, I don't feel sad anymore. I feel proud, because I finally stood up for myself.com. And even though my son still hasn't forgiven me, I sleep well at night.com, because for once, I didn't let them win. You know, for a long time after it all happened, I used to wonder if I went too far. I'd wake up at night, stare at the ceiling, and hear my own son's voice in my head. Mom, how could you? And for a split second, I'd feel guilty. But then I'd remember everything that led up to that moment, the slammed doors, the cold shoulders, the whispers I wasn't supposed to hear, the way they laughed about me when they thought I wasn't listening. And I'd remind myself, I didn't do this to them. They did this to me. When they changed those locks, they didn't just shut me out of the house. They shut me out of my own family. They made it clear that I was only welcome on their terms. When I was quiet, when I was small, when I didn't take up too much space. And if I dared to be more, if I dared to have needs, or an opinion, or a backbone, I was a burden. So no, I don't regret what I did. Not for a single second. Let me tell you something, whoever is listening to me now, never, ever let someone make you feel like you're less than. I don't care if it's your children, your in-laws, your friends, or the neighbor down the street. You have a right to your dignity. You have a right to be treated with respect. And if they can't do that, then you have the right to walk away, even if it breaks your own heart to do it. It took me 70 years to learn that lesson. 70 years of bending over backwards, putting everyone else first, swallowing my pride just to keep the peace. And do you know what I got for all of it? A set of brand new locks on a door that used to be mine. That was my wake-up call. That was the day I realized that if I didn't stand up for myself, nobody else ever would. I'm not saying it was easy. Selling that house, the house I built my whole life in, was like tearing out a piece of my soul. I walked through those rooms one last time before the papers were signed. The kitchen where I taught my son to crack his first egg. One message still rings in my ears. Mom, you can't do this to us. We have kids. I raised him with kids in mind. I worked 2 jobs so he could go to school. I skipped vacations so I could buy that house in the first place. And this was the son who changed the locks on me. No, I didn't answer. I didn't respond. I just let him sit with it. 2 days later, they showed up at my motel. I heard the knock, and for a second my heart twisted. Part of me still wanted to open the door and hold him. Part of me still wanted to say, fine, let's talk about this. But then I remembered standing on that porch, groceries in my hands, staring at those new locks. And I remembered the laughter I heard from inside when I knocked that day. They weren't sorry. They just weren't used to me fighting back. Eventually, I opened the door. My daughter-in-law did the talking first, all teary, hands folded like she was on some soap opera. Please, Mama, she said. The kids need stability. They need their home. I just stared at her. That's funny, I said, because I needed my home too. And you locked me out of it. Her tears dried up real quick after that. And then my son stepped forward. Why are you doing this? He asked me. Because I finally learned my worth, I said. And because this house was never a gift for you, it was my life's work. You took it for granted. Now it's gone. They didn't like that answer. They yelled. They begged some more. And when that didn't work, they turned mean. You're going to die alone, My daughter-in-law hissed at me. Your grandkids will never forgive you. And do you know what I said? That's fine. I'd rather die alone than live with people who treat me like I'm disposable. Then I closed the door. The next few weeks were chaos. They tried everything: legal loopholes, angry relatives calling me up, neighbors whispering behind my back. But my lawyer had made sure the paperwork was airtight. The house wasn't theirs to fight for, and the sale wasn't going to stop. The moving trucks came early on a Tuesday morning. I stayed far away that day. I didn't want to see them carrying out furniture. Didn't want to see them crying on the curb, because no matter how strong I acted, my heart still hurt. But do you know what hurt worse? Thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't fought back. If I'd let them keep that house, they would have kept walking over me until there was nothing left. And one day, I'd be gone, and they'd still be laughing, telling everyone how easy it was to get rid of me.com. Not anymore. When the house officially closed, I threw myself a little party. Just me, some cake from the bakery, and a bottle of cheap champagne. I raised my glass and said out loud, "To new beginnings." The hallway where we marked his height on the wall year after year. The living room where every Christmas morning came alive with wrapping paper and laughter. I touched every wall. I whispered goodbye. And then I walked out, head high, and never looked back. People talk about revenge like it's sweet. But let me tell you the truth, revenge is bitter. It leaves a taste in your mouth you can't wash away. But sometimes, you need that bitterness. Sometimes you need to remind yourself that you are still alive, still fighting, still capable of protecting yourself. After everything settled, I bought myself a little place by the water. Nothing fancy, just 2 bedrooms, a porch with peeling paint, and a garden where I can sit with my tea in the mornings. And do you know what? It's the happiest I've been in years. Because it's mine. Every chair, every cup, every flower in the yard, all mine. Nobody can change the locks on me, ever. Sometimes I think about my son. I wonder if he'll ever understand why I did what I did. I wonder if one day he'll knock on my door, not because he needs something, but because he just wants to sit with me, like we used to. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. But I've made my peace with it either way, because the truth is, I love him. I will always love him. But loving someone doesn't mean letting them hurt you over and over again. Sometimes love means saying, no more. And if you've ever been where I was, standing outside your own life, feeling like a stranger, I want you to hear this. You are allowed to take your power back. You are allowed to stop being quiet. You are allowed to choose yourself, even if it costs you everything. The day I sold that house, I didn't just sign a deed. I signed a promise to myself that I would never let anyone make me feel small again. And that's a promise I plan to keep until my very last breath. So here I sit, sunlight streaming through my windows, a cup of tea in my hand, and the soft sound of waves outside. I'm not bitter anymore. I'm free. And that, my dear, is worth more than any house in the world.